welcome to From the Heart. I'm so glad you're back. I am your host, Bernita Jackson, and this is From the Heart, a conversation by women for women. And this is our new season, and we have a wonderful show to share with you today. So while you're signing on, coming to Facebook, coming to Hope TV, coming to YouTube, call your best friends, call your sisters, call your cousins and your mama. You do not want to miss this conversation for women with women. Today, I have an amazing guest, and we're going to talk about work life balance. How many times have you had that conversation? Well, today I have an expert on this. Her name is Dina Smith, and she is coming to us, and we are going to have an amazing conversation. So, welcome, Dina, to From the Heart. Welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us today. This is Dina Smith. She is my friend and colleague. She is with the practice Closet Therapy with Dina. We all probably need this by the end of the show, and there's going to be some information that's going to scroll so you will know how to reach out. But Dina, this welcome, first of all. Thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me. As I was saying, I selected this topic because I probably am at the top of the line of needing a bit of work life balance. And I knew that you were really an expert at this. And so Dina came to this when she became a mother. She has two beautiful daughters, and she really wanted to be the example for her daughters of how a woman could be a professional and be a wife and a mother and still also make her children the priority. She's done a wonderful job of this. She has two successful daughters. And so, Dina, thank you and welcome. And let's just jump right in. Help us understand this thing called work life balance.
Well, Renita, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I love talking about work life balance. My motivation for getting into this field and creating the company Closet Therapy with Dina comes from being out of balance, right? We all know what the extremes look like. We're either on vacation or we're all the way to the right, stressed out. And so
Yes.
somewhere in between, we have to find a life. We can't live on vacation and we cannot live in overwhelm for extended periods of time. And I came to the Atlanta area coming off of a divorce with one child in tow. And I'd like to tell this story. I moved on Friday, hit the ground running, and started work on Monday. And so I started in a retail environment, and that's just not the place for a single mother at all. And so I wanted to kind of reclaim my life, reclaim the idea that, or recover from the idea that my daughter started to read and I had nothing to do with it, right? Because all of my time was going to this career field. Um, but it does require a considerable amount of effort in order to make significant change and go from overwhelm and being out of balance to really fighting to stay in balance. So in that process, I got my master's. I became a licensed professional therapist, but I also knew that there's a component that we don't really count as valuable, and that is my support system, my schedule, my structure, the way that I live my life by the calendar on purpose, very intentional, is the only way that I made it through my graduate program. With a
Mm.
child, with family support in the area, there was no way I would have been successful without all of those components. And so I really felt like it was important my motivation is really about children, right? But it's more effective to go straight to the source and working with moms and women to change the lives and really affect the lives of the children through affecting the change to the mom, because we really, children do what they see, they don't really do what we say. And so
Absolutely.
I can't model anything more for my children than boundaries. right? And creating space for them to say yes and no, whatever that yes and no looks like. Mm-hmm.
So often, Dina, our upbringing is kind of the groundwork for this. And I came along in a generation where work was kind of your badge of honor. And
Mm,
so we did not learn or good boundaries. And
mm,
we were taught that to be a good mom or a good wife, that yes, your answer was always yes. So where does that start? So you've raised two incredible daughters and you've
thank
been able
you.
to find this balance. So where does that change start? Because for many of us, we've kind of been in this mode of yes, and we don't get to know until we're just so overwhelmed that you're right, we're up against the wall. And so where do we learn how to do that?
So the idea of change as we know it happens, it can evolve, it happens over time. We have children and we learn how to raise them, but the idea of change is never perfected more quickly than in points of pain, right? And so that is the rock bottom idea in addiction. It is the
Yes,
I am so worn out I can't function of many
yes.
women. You talked about a badge of we've learned and we have this badge of work, but really I like to think of it as we learned the badge of being the workhorse, which is there
Mm,
is no honor in being anybody's workhorse. And so that wherever your change comes from, it's good to be in that place. It's good to be in a place of hurt, despair. I don't want to do this anymore. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's a great place to start because we know what very clearly that boundary is. We are learning boundaries in a way that is perfected in our health. It shows up in our stress levels, it shows up in anxiety, it shows up in our bodies, our health. And so when we do know, when we get these little signs and symptoms that we're out of balance, it's about listening and paying attention because if not, we're going to continue to repeat the cycle. And I knew that my pride, I was raised with in a two household family. And so someone was always available and I wanted to be available. I didn't want the school system to raise my children. I didn't want a babysitter or my family member. I wanted to have a hand in that. And so that's finding purpose for change. That's being
mm,
in a painful place and also knowing that you want something different. And so sometimes it's not a big, huge revelation. It's not a big, huge, I'm just too uncomfortable for my own taste. And
mhm,
that is kind of the starting point from which we can all sprout. We can all grow from. It's just as important to know what you don't want as it is to know what you do want. And so from there, we look around. We are in the age of social media. We're in an age of access to everything. Use
mhm,
that to your advantage. If you want to make change and you quote unquote can't afford therapy, which I think therapy is way more accessible than it has been ever in time. If you don't have access to a coach, a mentor, a pastor, an elder in your community that are able to model that for you, let's really get behind following people that feed you, right? Not just following the latest dance trend on social media. Social media can be your own personal vision board. It can be
mm.
the shaping and the molding up of the mindset that's required to propel you forward.
R. Kelly, is he muted or canceled for you?
I'm not canceling TP2.com because that's my joint. I'm not gonna be able to do it.
Look, we're going to get all in there today. We're going back to church. Are you ready to get in the house or are you ready to stay online?
I don't want to catch COVID. I'm ready.
but I want to be safe.
Burnout in 2021, do you feel it?
I am going, like, not trying to get burnt out because I understand how it is. If you die today or tomorrow, your job description is going to be on somebody's Indeed.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Jermaine Dolly, Mr. Hello Dolly himself, and guess what? You're tuned in to Tea and Worship with my homies, Mignon and Corey. Keep it locked, y'all.
Hey y'all, it's Candy West, and you're watching Tea and Worship with Mignon and Corey.
It's your boy James Fortune, and you are watching my favorite news show, Tea and Worship, with my sis Mignon and Corey.
So often, Dina, I was reading a study that's going on up at Notre Dame, and they were saying that 55% of women identified with being in a work setting that they weren't fulfilled in. But because that work setting was meeting some other boxes, so it was meeting the income box. But we all know that the income is not at the top of the list if you're very unfulfilled. And so one of the questions that many have is, I've been doing this so long, I'm 10, 15 years in, where are my first steps in beginning to make this change? I'm in the pain that you just talked with us about, but I just don't quite know where step one is and step two is. What would you suggest to that person?
So in my practice, Closet Therapy with Dina, I do professional organizing, coaching, and counseling. And so whatever door that I am stepping or meeting a client or a person through, I'm bringing all that with me. And it has a lot of overlap between getting your home organized and getting your social life organized and getting all these components aligned so that you are walking in your own destiny, right? So the first part in it is we have to realize that this is a long haul. This is a marathon, not a sprint, in changing your life. We did not get here overnight. We're not going to get out of this overnight. And so adjusting our mindset around the fact that it's not HGTV, it's not the 30-minute before and after, that we want to start with, where's a little bit of joy that we can find? My joy is dance, right? And so how can I take that little bit of thing, little tiny thing, and spread that feeling out throughout my week in a way that's manageable for the lifestyle of my family? Early on with my children, we have rules. We have one saying that rings true no matter what. That's what they do. That's not what we do. That's saying that we have a priority in this household for the values and morals that we support. And so it cuts out all of that looking left and right. I got to do this. I got to speed up. I got to do all these things. we are doing what we need to do for our household. And it starts with small boundaries like no one talks to me when I'm in the bathroom. If you have children that are really, really young, this may not apply, but as it's appropriate for your age range of your children, you can start carving out time for yourself in the smallest of ways by enforcing boundaries. Boundaries also assist us with allowing our children to have boundaries for themselves, to say no when they need to say no. And so starting out with what we can do and what we cannot do is a good starting point for, okay, now that no one is allowed to knock on the door unless the house is on fire, if I'm in the restroom, that means I can have some self-care time in the bathroom, bubble bath, breathing, being away from the children, running away. For me, it started really, really small when I started to kind of piece this thing together. I remember I was working for a community service board right out of grad school, and I had a lapse of time after I had dropped my oldest off and I had to be at work. And between that time and the destination, there was a Target, right? And I was just like, oh my God, I'm in Target alone without a child and a stroller and a this and a that. I feel like I had just stolen some time. I just stole some time. God gifted me with this big old, a whole 20 minutes of alone time in Target, right? I thought I was in heaven. And so duplicating that feeling, trying to now, can I be more strategic about carving out that 20 minutes? It just gave me life for 20 minutes. And I felt so much better infusing some of that balance in there. How can I be intentional about it? And it starts really simply going back to setting boundaries in the home, setting boundaries in the, okay, no one talks to me on the restroom. Okay, you have to knock before you come into my bedroom. You can't just bust up in my bedroom. Like the simple things, we have to start with where we are and what we have at our disposal.
So Dina, you talked about two things that I think are really important, and that is our personal space and our calendars. And so often, we talk about, you can look at someone's desk and kind of tell what's going on in their life. I hope that's not 100% true.
Not
because I looked around at mine and I thought, oh, so good we're having this conversation. But how important really is that personal space when we begin to try to look at balance? How much, is that something that should be a priority when we're trying to begin to make this change?
So remember I said it happens over a continuum. We have to also grant ourselves grace in that process. We have to be gracious with ourselves and not beat ourselves up about what we are or are not doing. So going back to the question of, what was the question again?
The question was about personal space. And,
okay.
Sometimes, it's just, we're cluttered. And how important is that in helping us really achieve balance?
So there is a connection between your external environment and your internal environment. But we are also humans that we have to grant ourselves grace in the learning process. We're learning and we're gradually tweaking along the way and gaining habits, failing a little bit, starting all over a little, hopefully failing forward. Or hopefully we are failing forward and doing it better each and every time and learning along the way. So the external environment is definitely a reflection of what's going on inside. I see it so often. A lot of my clients struggle with anxiety and depression because that's just the nature of calling a professional organizer who is also a therapist. I get a higher percentage of those types of clients. I see it so often that depression strikes and that whole house is a wreck, right? But you don't have the energy, you don't have the motivation, you don't have the things you need in order to execute. And so each time there's a depressive episode or an anxious episode, we want to make sure, even if it's, I tuned in a lot earlier, that's progress. I
Yes.
tuned in and caught it a lot earlier. That's progress for us. And so that environment may look crazy for a couple years until we get in the habit of it. May. I mean, my desk looks great right now, but 2 days ago, there's just too much. Sometimes you're juggling too many balls and it's unrealistic. What I also wanted to point out is you're going to always choose your relationship over your things. What I mean by that is there's a lot of pressure for moms to be, look, and smell perfect, right?
Yes.
And those things may not align all the time because
Right.
we carry the emotional load of all the checklists of all the things, right? And so if we're
Right.
carrying the load for the household of all those things that some of our counterparts just don't even think about, we need to put that somewhere, right? And so you talked about your calendar.
Yes.
Put it down. Manage
Yes.
your stress in a way that, okay, I don't even, if once I have all this stuff going on in my head, once I get it on a paper, on calendar, I can say, oh, I don't even have to be worried about this till 2 weeks from now. There's a load that's lifted in using a calendar. Some people use their phone. I write a calendar and use my phone, right? Whatever works for you and your family, but we have to make sure we manage our expectations of ourselves and not put too much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, because we always, if it comes down to doing dishes and reading a book to your child, choose a child.
Yes.
Right? Choose that relationship. And it's about really going back to boundaries. I'm not going to run myself ragged to keep this house looking a certain way, because at a certain point, you can be so busy, somebody else needs to come in and do this. We have to make that decision. If you're single, if you're a single mom, or if you're a single parent, or even if you're dual income household, it may be in the best interest for your household. Remember, that's what we do. That's what they do. That's not what we do. We have a household manager. We have a help. And so sometimes we need help in that process while we're learning.
You had this epiphany based on what your grandmother had done. Saved money for 6 months, paid off debt, slept on the floor. And because of this conversion moment, you literally are sitting on the board of a bank that wouldn't have even given you a loan.
I was a pastor of a church. I was spending so much money dressing like a preacher, driving preacher cars. If I'm spirit filled, the same Holy Ghost that makes me shout can make me wait until I can afford a BMW, and stop giving money, donating money to big banks, paying them 18% interest for the right to use their credit card to buy something I can't afford. It's a mentality.
we talked about our calendars, we talked about space, and of course, our children are our priority. But we know
Mhm.
as women, we're also trying to balance other relationships. If you're married, you're
Mm.
trying to balance, a husband, or
Mhm.
even if you're not married, a significant other. And
Mhm.
sometimes that we find it difficult to put us at the top of the list. And
Mm.
so, how often because we're trying to be that all things to all folks, and we know when we look at what that balance look like, it never works in our favor. So, what does it look like
Absolutely.
now? You're trying to put in a relationship, and still, have some balance.
Well, I'll say this: you have to be in agreement, right?
Ah,
You have to be in
yes,
agreement with what the expectations of us as individuals, us
yes,
as a couple, and us
yes,
as a family, right? And if in your household you may be in agreement that, like, I have a girlfriend who she takes care of the inside, he takes care of the outside, they have date night twice a month. That works for them, right?
yes,
For me, that
yes,
doesn't work because somebody else, we can pay somebody else to do the yard. We can pay somebody else to do, right?
yes,
But you have to come
yes,
into agreement with what is a priority. But I always encourage women to put themselves at the top of that list, because the more satisfied, taken care of, nurtured, supported you are from the top down, the more you're able to go this way with it, giving more of yourself. You have a larger capacity to be a better mom, to be a better lover, to be a better whatever. And so the
yes,
agreement coming into the relationship can be, I'm not going to use the word should, can be that we are better parents, lovers, household members if we have taken care of ourselves. There's this poem. It's about basically a mermaid and a man. And
mm,
the mermaid cannot live on land. The man can't live under the sea. And so what we have to do is bring to the shoreline our jewels to
wow,
share together and negotiate. Look at this jewel. Look what I got. You're bringing the best versions of yourself in agreement together. This is what we're sharing together. And so putting ourselves first is us going into the sea and they're going to the shore to do their own work and decide what jewels they're going to bring to the shoreline to share. And that's a more beautiful experience if you're
yes,
in touch with what you can identify as your jewel. You can
yes,
identify as your best pieces. It's not to say that they're not going to see the not so great shiny jewels, but you want to have a good understanding that everybody wins. You get to go
yes,
be with your guys. I get to go be with my girls, or I can be by myself and get a massage, my nails, my hair. But when I come, I'm in a great mood, right?
yes,
I'm a
yes,
much better woman, lover, all this stuff if I get my
yes,
time by myself, if I take care of myself. And so that
absolutely.
takes some negotiation if you're already in a relationship and don't have that foundation, or if you are a single person coming into alignment. You guys have to agree on what that shoreline looks like,
Yes,
what that look crossroads looks like for you as a couple in order to be able to nurture from the top down. We gotta, mine goes from here to here, me and my relationship with God, here to here, me and my relationship with me and my heart's desires, and then everybody else, me and
yes,
them, everybody else. But
yes.
from the top down, I'm managed this way. I'm managing all this before we get to before we get to y'all.
Yes,
And it's easier to
yes,
do as our children age because they can't do the things that they need to do for themselves. But the more they know, the less I got to do. That's my
absolutely,
theory. Hmm.
absolutely. Well, that brings us to when we show up at the
Hmm.
shoreline. So often we are so physically depleted.
Mm.
And so because we've been, 2 or 3, we're wife, we're mom, we're
Hmm.
we're a professional.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, as professional women, we're doing 2 or 3 things to
Mm.
maintain that office or to maintain that. So let's, kind of tune in to now emotionally, I'm trying to
Mm.
get, but we know that emotionally I can't get there if physically I'm so depleted. So in terms of balance, physical, what does that look like when your clients come in, and they're 5 minutes late because they
Mhm.
just overbooked? What
Mhm.
does that look like? When you're having that conversation, what direction do you set?
So depletion has to do with rest. It has to do with preventative measures as well as current coping. And so when you are depleted physically, not much else matters. And so
Absolutely.
sometimes it's important. The goal is rest. The goal is
Yes.
recovery. And what that looks like, you can reverse engineer a lot of things. You can say, I'm going to go to sleep. That's kind of the resting point. But on the
Yes.
other end, I know that this physical activity that is painful up front gives me a return on my investment twofold. So 1 hour of physical activity on Monday has a return on that investment for 48 hours afterwards. And so knowing that we can reverse engineer energy on the front end, I'm just going to sleep. I'm just going to rest. I'm going to take time off. I'm going to prioritize downtime. Because sometimes there are times in life where all you can do is plop down in front of the TV and order some to go. My girlfriend and I have this thing that they can eat Cheetos tonight. Like they can eat Frosted Flakes tonight. They're not going to die from one bowl of cereal
Yes.
for dinner, right? And
Yes.
sometimes that's what you got. That's how you have to show up.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
getting into the bed early, one of the things that moderates bipolar swing,
Yes.
moderates the severe swing of depression to anxiety and mood changes, is 8 hours of sleep. And so if we can moderate our hormones, we can moderate our energy through getting a good night's rest. We don't give enough credit to what that gives us. When you're building muscle in the gym, the rest and recovery is just as important as the weightlifting. And so if we have spans of time where we're overworked, overwhelmed, we need spans of time where we're resting. Do some work, try to piecemeal it out a little bit, but get your rest and start with rest until you can build in the other things that feed us from the inside out.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, as we begin, this has been a wonderful conversation. I hope you all took lots of notes. As we go off the air, you will be able to see how to reach out and contact Dina Smith. She is again with therapy, closet therapy with Dina. As you can
Mhm.
imagine, we just talked about major life. We talked about our children, which are our heartbeats. We've talked
Mhm.
about how we need to show up. We've talked about relationships and, oh my goodness, personal space and those calendars. It takes all of that for us to begin to live a balance, a quality, and a joyful life. Gina, I
Mhm.
hope you'll come back because I know people are going to write in. We're going to have lots of questions. I'm sure we're going to have
I
to
love to
come.
show up again. It's a
I'm
pleasure to be
sure
here.
thank you so much. I'm
Mhm.
sure we're going to have to come back and have a second part. But again, this is some beginning steps. I hope you all remember her beautiful analogy of showing up at the shore with your
Mm.
jewels. That is something that I certainly remember. Thank you all so much for tuning in from the heart, our conversation with women for women. This is your host, Renita Jackson. And as you know, all the important issues are from the heart. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.